Few in China have felt the economic impact of the coronavirus as much as migrant workers. Hu Yunxi is a day laborer who usually works on construction sites, but the building sector took a hit from the coronavirus outbreak. Finding a job is harder now than it was. There are more protective regulations, like social distancing rules. But we have survived the worst months of the pandemic. At private job centers, postings on the windows show how much the job market has taken a hit. Wages are declining, the equivalent of around $20 per day instead of 30. But Hu Yunxi says he doesn't want to criticize China in front of the international media. Shi Yunyi is one of the few people in China willing to speak out. He's a human rights lawyer, and authorities have been watching him more closely since the pandemic began. When many Chinese took to social media to call for freedom of speech, he participated by signing a petition. The police told me that if I didn't cooperate with them and delete what I had written, if I continued to speak my mind, there would be consequences for my family and me. Shi Yanyi worries that the government will use the pandemic to tighten its control over Chinese citizens. A number of journalists have already felt the pressure. Li Zihua was a news anchor for state-controlled media. When the pandemic hit, he quit his job to report independently from Wuhan. A classified ad called for night shift workers at a funeral home. Li took the job hoping to find out the true number of people in Wuhan who had succumbed to the virus. He was broadcasting live when plainclothes police entered his apartment and arrested him. He disappeared for 2 months. In April, he appeared in a single video explaining that he was simply in quarantine. Many of his viewers say he had been forced to lie. China's critics say state propaganda has been ramped up since the pandemic began. State TV portrays China as a global savior, sending healthcare supplies by the ton to countries in need. National pride is on the rise. China's handling of the crisis has been a model for the world. That's the opinion of many here at the Great Wall. This is how China works. First, our leaders come up with a plan, and the people should follow without raising too many objections. It benefits everyone. Here you see the difference between socialism and capitalism. You should probably take a lesson from China. China believed it had the coronavirus pandemic under control. The economy was once again up and running, but a new outbreak threatens to draw the country back into a crisis.
Let's bring in our correspondent, Matthias Billinger, in Beijing. For more on this, good day to you, Matthias. China saying that the latest outbreak is under control in the capital and that infection rates will be lowering again in the next few days. How credible are these reports from the government?
Well, as if you remember the first outbreak and you remember how they were struggling to bring it under control at the first sight, it's really surprising that after a few days they say, okay, now we know everything that's happening on the ground and just wait, you will see in the next few days whether that the numbers will decline. What is different now is that they are able to test a lot more people, so they might be able to get a quicker picture of the whole thing within a shorter period. But of course, they haven't tested anybody. They are confident right now that it hasn't spread beyond the surroundings of this market and the people who are directly linked to this market. We still need to wait and see. They also said the same thing about Wuhan. They're in a better position now to make this assessment, but when the numbers decline, we will see the numbers declining. Until then, these are just words.
Matthias, I'd like to talk about what we were covering in our report, Beijing's messaging during this crisis. In our report, we see a China that's presenting itself as exporting the best practices to the entire world for containing the virus. How much is this messaging tied to the international pressure Beijing's facing to open up for an independent investigation into the initial outbreak in Wuhan?
Yeah, Beijing has faced a lot of criticism for its initial handling of the crisis, domestically and internationally. And the fact that they were able until recently to bring the numbers down was a key pillar of their strategy of defense. They will not allow an independent investigation that they do not control themselves. That they've made this clear, and it's totally beyond what Beijing has ever done. Beijing has never allowed external people to assess what is happening in the country. So it's very important for them to maintain this image that they are under control, and that's why it's very critical to them to bring these numbers down quickly here in Beijing, to show that they're under control, to show this to the international community so they can point to other countries and say, look how badly they are dealing with it, look how we are dealing with it. This is important for their international defense, but it's also important for people here in China. This is how the government justifies what it's done. This is how the government is trying to make people forget what happened at the beginning. And to a certain extent, it is working. I hear from time to time, just recently, just half an hour ago, somebody told me again, well, you should be glad that you're in China right now and not in Europe, because here at least the government is taking control of things. So bringing down these numbers is what they need to do now if they want to keep if they want to keep this under control.
Matthias Billinger, thanks so very much for that from Beijing.